Willkommen zurück zu Stanley Parable 6, dem flüssigen Käsehäppchen. Das 6 geändert die Zahl. Okay. Ja. Ich würde sagen, mal nochmal, was wir noch so haben. Als Finales. Eventuell. Dann haben wir sehr viel gezeigt.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Erstmal einfach so, sagst du, oder?
Nee, nimm mal den Bucket.
As Stanley lifted his bucket, he felt a connection to all buckets everywhere. This adventure, he decided, was for all of them.
Für alle Buckets da draußen.
Stanley clutched the bucket
Ja,
tightly
geh
to
mal
his
bis
chest
zum
and entered
Lift
the door on his
rufen
left.
und dann drehst dich mal um.
Still no one was here.
Also Lift ins
Stanley needed the bucket's
Überwachungsraum,
warmth and
meinst du?
comfort now more
Genau.
than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd... Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Der Bucket ist aber das Beste.
Mhm. Oh, hey,
The
Bucket.
elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
Everything will be fine.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley
So, jetzt
and the
gehst du
bucket
nochmal
wondered
genau.
to themselves.
Dann rufst du ihn, genau,
The
und
monitors
dann...
jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs.
Und dann wirst du eine
I'd
Sache
never seen
sehen,
anything
es
like
gibt einen
this, and
zweiten
it
Weg
very
gleich.
nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind.
Fuck, vielleicht hätte man den Raum davor machen sollen. Aber... Oh, ich glaube, da vorne hätten wir umdrehen müssen. Ach, es tut mir leid. Fällt mir noch irgendwas ein, was man von hier aus machen könnte. Ich glaube nicht. Außer einmal.
Würde ich sagen.
Ja, ganz. Start mal ganz neu.
Ich hätte was.
Ja, mach. Das ist niemals mehr. Oh.
Get well someday.
Wir sind mittlerweile mal wie. Aber ja, da umdrehen und halt wieder mit den Eimer noch runterspringen hätte ich noch. Und eine
All
Sache,
his co-workers were gone.
also
What could it mean?
die auch noch mit
Stanley
Eimer machen
decided to go
kann.
to the meeting
1,
room.
2 oder 3
Perhaps
quasi.
What new mysteries lay in store for our bucket-loving heroes today? Let's find out. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where... Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Ich habe nochmal nachgeguckt, wir waren anscheinend doch richtig fit. Wir müssten nur etwas warten anscheinend.
If not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
Beim Aufzug warten, das, ne?
Mhm.
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind.
So, irgendwann müsste die Tür hinter uns aufgehen. Drück nochmal vielleicht auf den Button oder so, geht das? Nee. Aber ja, theoretisch, ich habe es gerade gesehen und angeguckt, dass... Aha!
Ich hätte wieder zurückgehen.
Und jetzt drücken wir auf die Lampen. Genau da hinten. So, jetzt kannst du auch gleich runterspringen. Oh ja, du hast ein Secret gefunden. Woo! Bitte.
Mode.
Geiler Song.
Das war die Klassiker hier, ey.
Ich meine, damals zu 2014 oder wie auch immer, ich meine, das war ein bisschen nachgereicht, aber du halt solche Kleinigkeiten gefunden hast damals, das war dann halt schon was anderes. Da gab's nicht, klar gab's auch YouTuber und Blogger und so über Geheimnisse oder so, aber es war halt was Kleines. Ne, also das war halt nicht so ein Riesending mit
Ja.
Obwohl es gab ja auch die Steam-Threads damals und das waren dann immer die krassen Typen, aber ja, dann spring nochmal runter.
But just as Stanley was about to proceed further into the mind control facility, he tripped and fell over the railing and into the dark void below. Thankfully, he fell directly onto the bucket, which safely cushioned his fall. Now, what to do next, Stanley wondered. Stanley and the bucket could find no way out of this enormous pit, and so eventually they decided that the best thing to do would be to simply get comfortable down here. So they set up a little couch and relaxed. It really wasn't so bad down here, a bit cold perhaps. After some time had gone by, they installed a few shelves as well, and a sort of kitchenette. that was useful for when the bucket was craving paninis. But it wasn't until the rugs and the standing lamps came in that it really started to feel like a home. In fact, after some time, Stanley realized that it had been ages since he had even thought of the mind control facility at all. He'd never gotten to fully explore what was up there, never been able to unearth the many mysteries of the mind control facility. This lack of closure began to eat at him. Soon he was dwelling on his regrets, and the state of their home slowly decayed as Stanley became withdrawn and neglected the cleaning. It unsettled the bucket deeply. Stanley wasn't usually like this. The bucket tried to reach out to him again and again, but to no avail. All Stanley could think about, all he could talk about, was going back, doing it over again, staying on the path. It was a mistake to leave the path. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. I need to do what the narrator says. I need to see the true ending. This made no sense at all to the bucket, which was simply trying to live its life down here as comfortably as possible. Yet Stanley was unconsolable. This isn't an ending. This is just a hole in the ground. The bucket sighed. True, it wasn't an ending. But it's where we happen to be. And maybe, possibly, if we accept the reality of things, maybe this will become an ending eventually. It's what the bucket was counting on. The two of them waited for a very long time.
So, und jetzt nimmst du noch einmal den Eimer und gehst dann den falschen Weg.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
Nachdem du in der Cafeteria warst, links und dann mit dem Fahrstuhl nach unten.
Is a bucket. And indeed it was. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest.
Rechts, genau.
And this was not the correct way to the meeting room. But Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be.
Ja,
and here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this no? Never mind.
Jetzt geht's auf von links.
Stanley took the door on his left to go back, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section.
Warte mal kurz, bevor du runterfährst, guck dich nochmal rechts um. Da ist ja noch eine Tür gewesen. Nee, er muss runter. Einen runter doch und dann.
Oh, good Stanley. I'm glad you found your way here. I knew you'd find this place eventually.
Ja, hä?
Aber schon.
You see, your friend
Moment,
and I are concerned with you,
warte.
Stanley. We've come together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket.
Oh, es tut mir leid. Du
The
hättest,
bucket isn't even from the
du kannst
original
neu starten.
Stanley Parable.
Okay.
Beim Runterspringen wenn der Fahrstuhl, hier wird noch ein weiter gemüsst mit dem Bucket.
Ja.
Workers were gone.
Und dann auf das Geländer runterspringen.
Stanley decided to go
Da
to the
musst
meeting
du.
room. Finally, yes. The
Ist alles schon ein bisschen her.
Yes. I love that bucket.
Los.
Stanley clutched the
Hatten
bucket
jetzt,
tightly
sie
to
haben
his
den bisher
chest.
das
This
Thema
was
aufgehoben.
correct
Jedes Mal hat
to the
er
meeting
was
room.
gesagt.
But Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him.
Ist schon
that the
beeindruckend, wie viel Liebe die da
employee
reingesteckt
was
haben,
simply
finde
the
ich.
place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room. No, said the bucket. Don't go
Genau,
to
und
the
jetzt
meeting
da
room.
drauf, ne,
Go
auf das
somewhere else.
Railing-Ding hier.
The cargo lift, yeah, good, said the bucket. Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do. Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked.
Not.
No, stop. Look there on the wall. You see, there's a sign right there. It says, no buckets past this point. Stanley, how could you think it was okay to bring the bucket here? Unless, what if the problem is that you actually don't know what is a bucket and what isn't a bucket? I suppose that would explain a lot about your behavior up to this point. Which, if that's true, well, my goodness, I think we have to do something about it. This misunderstanding could have dire consequences on the entire rest of the game if not addressed quickly and properly. So much of the impact of the story is dependent on your understanding of what is and isn't a bucket. Please, step in here for a moment. Now then,
Willkommen
I'm
in der
going to
neuen
run you
Spielform.
through some test scenarios, and you'll tell me whether or not the thing I'm showing you is a bucket. Simple enough, right?
Klar,
This
easy.
should tell us everything we'll ever need to know about what is
Bald auch auf
or is
Pro7 habe ich
not
gehört.
a bucket. Okay, let's begin. Item 1. Is this a bucket? Incorrect. It is a hologram of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 2. Is this a bucket? Incorrect. It is a 3D printed recreation of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 3. Is this a bucket? Correct. This is a bucket. Item 4. Is this a bucket?
Eindeutig.
Correct. This is a tractor and not a bucket. To be honest, I just sort of put this one in here as a gimme, but I was starting to get concerned that even this might be too much for you. Thank you for not making me look like an idiot. Okay, next one. Is this a bucket? Correct. This is a bucket.
Hä?
Item 6. Is this a bucket? Trick question. Both. Gotcha.
What?
Item... Wait, hold on. I can't find the next one. Let me see. It should be around here somewhere. Yes. Thank you. There's nothing here. Of course it isn't a bucket. We both know full well that nothing isn't a bucket. Wait, when I say nothing isn't a bucket, that makes it sound like I'm saying everything is a bucket, which of course is not true. Unless... Is that what you think? Answer me straight, Stanley. Are you trying to tell me that you believe everything is a bucket? You know what? I'm too confused to even sort it out. I've lost all sense of perspective. What is a bucket? What isn't a bucket? Mere moments ago I could answer these questions with confidence. And yet now I'm somewhat adrift. Do any of us know what a bucket is? Am I a bucket? Stanley, I can't keep doing this. I'm losing myself, and myself was all I ever had to begin with. I'm afraid the bucket is threatening to tear our relationship apart. I can't have that.
Dieser Bucket das gemacht hat, ey.
But I'm going to erase all buckets.
Die Weltentdecker herbeigerufen.
Okay, here we go.
This bucket, yes.
What happened? Is everything gone? Why did everything disappear? Wait, was everything a bucket?
Oh, klar, das ist ein Bucket.
Every single thing in the game was a bucket. Oh my God, I had no idea. Except me. I am a
Das war kein Eimer.
And you, Stanley, you're still here. You're not a bucket either. Oh, this is wonderful.
Wie oft jetzt schon Bucket gesagt wurde, ey.
Yes, I actually feel much more at ease right now. It's delightful to get some clarity on that issue, but it doesn't change the fact that we haven't got a game. So, tell you what, I'll reset everything and we'll put back all of the buckets, okay? And we'll know that it's all a bucket. But if you run into anyone else, maybe don't mention that. Who knows what that information might do to a person.
Bleibt unter uns,
Alright,
ne?
here we go.
Richtig.
So. Jetzt würde ich sicher gehen, das Spiel einmal nochmal ganz neu starten, nicht, dass da irgendwas schiefgegangen ist. Oh. Tempel der frischen Luft.
Jawohl.
Oh, da ist der Fern! Alter.
Ganz wichtig für die Story, hat er gesagt.
Mhm. Hast du das nicht bemerkt?
Hold on. What's this?
8. 8. 8. 8.
The
8.
Stanley Parable 8? No. This doesn't look right at
8.
all. The Stanley
8.
Parable takes place in an office building. There are doors and branching paths. This is just a button that says 8.
8.
Where did the Stanley Parable go?
8. 8. 8. 8. 8.
Wie schnell sich was dumm anhört, wenn man es ganz aufeinander sagt.
8. 8. 8. 8. 8.
Und einfach weiter.
8. 8. 8. 8.
Well, I'm looking around
8.
and I really can't find the
8.
game anywhere. No
8.
boss's office or mind
8.
control facility
8.
or any of that.
8.
Literally just this
8.
8 button.
8.
And what's worse is that you
8.
seem to be having a better
8.
time with this nonsense game than with the
8.
story I wrote
8.
for you. I'm
8.
actually a little insulted.
8. 8. 8. 8.
Ja, gibt es wirklich schon ein
8.
Spiel, was...
Well, I don't
8.
know what happened to the
8.
Stanley Parable or what the 8 button is, but
8.
apparently you're having a
8.
riveting time with
8.
it. And frankly,
8.
I don't even want to
8.
pander to someone who finds this
8.
enjoyable. So with
8.
that, I guess
8.
just go ahead and enjoy the Stanley Parable
8.
8.
8. 8. 8.
Das
8.
Achievement.
8. 8. 8.
Ich hab doch gesehen, dass es einfach eine 8 drauf gibt. Muss doch das hier sein.
8.
Wahrscheinlich 30 Mal drücken
8.
oder so.
8. 8. 8. 8.
Ob der aber nochmal zurückkommt. Schaut noch kurz.
8. 8.
Der hat auch noch was zu sagen.
8. 8.
Bisher konnte er nicht so schnell aufhören.
8. 8. 8. 8.
Und nicht mitgezählt, wie oft
8.
ich das schon gedrückt habe.
8. 8. 8. 8.
Okay, ich mach das jetzt noch 5 Mal.
8. 8. 8.
4,
8.
5.
8.
Okay. The Stanley Parable.
8.
Nein! Auf ewig.
Hold on. What's this?
Auf ewig huckt. Wir
Ich muss das ganze Spiel nochmal neu starten.
kommen nie wieder raus.
Gesunden Schaden.
Stanley Parable Teil 9, Teil 5. Spinnen.
Das ist so schlecht. Das ist wieder geil.
Das ist
So.
das Game anders.
Es gibt noch nur eine Stelle, wo du sehr oft 8 eingeben kannst.
Ah, okay.
All of his co-workers were
Hate.
gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What
8.
dark secret was being hid from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible
8.
truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number. 2845. Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
Aber ja, ich glaube...
Ja.
Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Das war's.
Das war's großenteils, ja.
Ich glaube, einmal könnten wir es noch neu... Oh, warte, ich kann dir da was raussuchen. Warte. Und zwar gibt es nämlich auf der, wenn du, du könntest noch was zeigen, und zwar wenn du nochmal in die Ausstellung gehst, zum Merch-Stand, da war ein QR-Code und da können wir noch mal uns angucken, was dahinter steckt.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Expo.
You see, Stanley, I've been reflecting on the Stanley Parable and about how roundly disappointing this ultra-deluxe version has turned out to be. The original Stanley Parable was a landmark, and any new content for it should live up to that legacy. So forget this ultra-deluxe nonsense. I say we take it one step even further. Which is why I'm very proud to announce for the first time ever, the Stanley Parable 2. Yes, you see, isn't this far superior to a measly re-release with a few minor additions? Think of all the new territory we'll cover with a fully fledged sequel. An entirely new experience, built from the ground up. Why, there are so many possibilities. It could go in so many different directions. This is what fans have truly been asking for. Now, to be clear, I haven't quite nailed down what exactly the Stanley Parable 2 is going to be, but let's take a look at some of the features I've been developing for it. I figure that if I can loosely organize a handful of interesting concepts, that surely the game will
und der QR-Code
spring up around them. Here we are. Go on, try out some of the new features.
Von mir aus kannst du das dir doch irgendwie zeigen, wenn du möchtest.
Ja.
Mal lohnt es sich.
It's a helpful informative video to learn more about Stanley Parable and what the journey of becoming a sequel is all about.
Say there, Timmy. What's that you're enjoying? Why, it's breakfast, of course. Everyone loves breakfast. But did you know that breakfast is getting a sequel? That's right. It's called Lunch. And critics are raving that lunch will be everything breakfast was and more. With a little luck, we may even get a trilogy series out of it. Say, you know what a sequel is, don't you, Timmy? Why, sequels are the world's way of clinging helplessly to the past. We all want more of the things we love, and we're
Folge
all
aufnehmen,
afraid of change,
ja.
which is what makes sequels so popular. New ideas are dangerous, Timmy.
Warte, ich kann mal gucken, dass ich das ausschreiben kann.
Wenn du mir kurz sagst, wo du bist, dann passt es.
Okay, ich bin bei Sekunde 43.
Ja, passt.
Okay, dann 3, 2, 1, go.
And they can lead to early aging. This eager-minded young thinker is just 29 years old. That's why we have sequels, to keep us couched in the familiar and the comfortable. Sequels are the bedrock of a healthy, functional society. And if you look around you, you'll find them everywhere you go. For instance, this man is developing a sequel to the automobile, which we'll call the vertical automobile. It's a useless, impractical invention, and in 2 days' time, the man will be publicly stoned to death for his crimes against gravity. Not all sequels are heretical nonsense, however. Here's the man who invented breathing, which is the sequel to suffocating and dying a slow death. Even your parents are getting a sequel, Timmy. Their names are Rob and Jessica, and they'll be taking care of you once your original parents are sent back in time to fight a secret war for the government. Sequels can be very fashionable. This young woman is wearing 5 shirts at once, which is the sequel to wearing 4 shirts at once. Look at Becky over there, wearing only 2 shirts at once. Get with the times, Becky. In fact, there is only one single thing in the world that isn't a sequel. It's this. We don't know what it is or why it exists, but it's the prequel from which all sequels are derived. And just like everything else, the Stanley Parable is getting a sequel too. We all know, of course, that it was your favorite game as a child. Don't you remember those long, lazy afternoons you spent playing the Stanley Parable? Watching your precious youth fritter away hour after hour. We've all wasted our childhoods in one way or another, and you were fortunate enough to get to waste yours on the Stanley Parable. But the Stanley Parable came out years ago, and you're not a child anymore. You're a man, which is like the sequel to a child. And as a man, you want manly things like taxes and cheating at baseball. You need a man's video game, Timmy. And that's why the Stanley Parable 2 will be perfect for you. It's as manly as video games can get. And if you don't believe me, let's look at the burly hunk of a man who's responsible for the game. Here he is, hard at work. His name is Gregory 8-Pack, and he's the cutting picture of raw, virile masculinity. Gregory is what we call the ideas guy, and he has the most important role on the team. The ideas guy tirelessly comes up with interesting concepts and then hands them off to the rest of the developers for the relatively simple job of turning those concepts into reality. For example, he's the one who picked up the phone and declared, "Someone ought to make a sequel to the Stanley Parable." Good work, Gregory. Go ahead and take the rest of the day off. With the hard part out of the way, work on the game can now begin. The game's developers must answer a simple question. What makes a sequel in the first place? Well, it's simple. Sequels are an opportunity to correct the mistakes of their predecessors. We've all made mistakes, and we've all caused harm to someone we love in order to cover up our mistakes. When developing this particular sequel, it's important to start by thinking, what mistakes did the original Stanley Parable make? Well, first off, most of the pornography in the original game was stolen or pirated, and it's time we paid the licensing fees fair and square. Second, the Stanley Parable was catastrophic for this man named Leroy, whose personal information, including home address, social security number, and bank information, were all displayed prominently in multiple locations throughout the game.
Das haben wir auch aus Versehen gezeigt.
Identity were stolen. The fact remains that his personal information was the emotional core of the game and absolutely vital to a nuanced understanding of the story. As reparation for the harm we caused him, the sequel will contain a brief and insincere apology to Leroy, tucked deep within the game where it will be difficult to find. Finally, the Stanley Parable made the mistake of leaking too many government secrets about the nature of the Time Wars. Without these intricate details of specific military tactics, the story is likely to make very little sense. But we've decided to remove them from the sequel in the interest of helping the state's efforts. We'll get to you yet, Time Dracula. Now then, it's time to set about constructing the
Genau, Time Dracula.
Game development is a difficult and complex art, one which can only be fully understood by this race of hyper-intelligent child soldiers bred in laboratories. They begin by studying the original Stanley Parable. Here it is in its raw, untouched form, a specimen of technological perfection. Time to exploit it for profit. We begin by adding jokes. The Stanley Parable was most widely known for its stark lack of humor, bucking all conventional industry wisdom. It was a bold artist statement that its developers stood firmly behind. But in 2022, it's impossible to reach even a single consumer of video games without jokes of some kind. So very well, jokes it'll be. During its development, over 500 kiloliters of comedy will be funneled directly into the core of the Stanley Parable 2, creating jobs for hundreds of machine operators and producing 30,000 tons of pollutant chemical byproduct, which will be pumped directly into local lakes, rivers, and beautiful nature reserves like these all over the country. Another common complaint of the Stanley Parable is that there wasn't enough gameplay. And so for the sequel, its developers have gone to great lengths to fix this problem. Here we can see gameplay being printed onto sheets. Every video game contains as many as 1,000 sheets of gameplay, and several of the largest games ever made contain close to 1,500. On mobile devices, the gameplay sheets have to be printed smaller. For the Stanley Parable 2, as many as 35 new gameplay sheets are being printed, each of which must be delicately massaged by the hands of a child before being added into the game. This man is stealing gameplay sheets from the factory, which he likely intends to use for a personal project he's been developing in his spare time. A good public stoning will cure him of that inclination. Let's check on Gregory real quick. Ha! Still recovering from a hard day's work. Don't you move a muscle. Next up, it's time to blackmail the press. In a competitive market, blackmailing your local journalist can be one of the most effective methods of creating word-of-mouth buzz for your sequel. In fact, blackmail is the currency of social progress. From your neighborhood grocer to the teacher at your school to the man who helps you steal HBO, everyone responds to blackmail. And if you've never done it before, it's easy to practice at home on your friends and family. Simply follow the instructional pamphlet that your teacher hands out after the end of the film. And finally, there's one last tool at our disposal for making the sequel feel fresh and exciting, and that's packaging the game with collector's edition merchandise. If you order the Stanley Parable 2, you'll receive this cow's egg. A single egg will produce over 1,000 cows, which are, of course, the sequel to pigs. And there you have it. Everything there is to know about producing the Stanley Parable 2. Of course, you may know that there is also a game titled The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. So which game is the true sequel to the Stanley Parable? It's an excellent question, Billy. One which the child soldiers have been working round the clock to come up with an answer to. And after many weeks of diligent research, the conclusion they've reached is, who gives a shit? All that matters is that it's more content for you to cram down your insatiable gullet. You don't want thoughtful and nuanced answers to complex questions, Billy. You just want to eat bubble gum and cheated hopscotch. So get out there and consume. Do your civic duty and bully your parents into buying you every version of the Stanley Parable 2 on every platform. Tell your friends to bully their parents as well. It's through community efforts like these that the world comes together, in harmony and connection. And it's only through this connection that we'll defeat Time Dracula once and for all. Don't let the time-traveling vampires win. Buy the Stanley Parable 2 and pledge to support all sequels. For today, tomorrow, and into the great unknowable beyond.
Wir wollen Billy. 3 Jahre.
Gut, und eine Sache kann ich dir noch zeigen, und zwar, wir erinnern uns nochmal an die Memory Zone. Müssen wir jetzt nicht hingehen. Ja. Erinnerst du dich an dieses Foto mit diesem Fahrrad?
Ja.
Und da schicke ich dir jetzt mal ein YouTube-Video, was wir da zusammen noch angucken können. Und zwar ist das auch schon einige Jahre her, wodurch dieses Spiel auch sehr berühmt geworden ist. Ich weiß gar nicht mehr, wo sie es gezeigt hatten. Aber ja, ne, wenn du bereit bist, zähl zur Runde, dann können wir es zusammen gucken.
Jo, okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
I recently received an email from a man named Raphael, who writes, I just played your game, and I'd like to say it was the most annoying thing I ever played. It had its cool moments, but overall the experience was only of annoyance. The problem is that it does not touch the heart of people. It's a very emotionless game. Did you ask any girls to try out your game? I ask because they are blissfully less logical than us guys.
I am very logical myself, but also very emotional. So it was easy for me to find the game annoying. What happened is that your game frustrated me. I felt like I was being
Soweit ich weiß, ist es immer Urban Legend, ob diese E-Mail kam oder nicht, aber anscheinend kam sie so. Und auf irgendeiner Con haben sie es gezeigt. Irgendwo haben sie das gezeigt. Um Raphael zu sagen, fick.
I accomplished nothing. People play games because of what they can do inside them, and your game is very good at letting them know they can't do anything. Other things I didn't like were the amount of narrator dialogue too much, and that Stanley is repeated all the time by the narrator. Overall, your game is on a good path, I think. Good luck with it, and best regards, Raphael.
You know, Raphael, at first, your negative response to the game devastated me. After all, I managed to squeeze so many emotions into the first game. How could a logical yet emotional person like yourself have been disappointed? But then I realized that much to the contrary, your emotional standard is simply much higher than a normal human being's. So I've come to think of you as a mentor, an emotional beacon toward which I might sail my wayward narrative ship. That's why I've discarded the Stanley Parable as it previously existed and rebuilt it from the ground up to capture not just many emotions, but all emotions. And I think few would disagree that it's a significant step up. Why don't I take you on a little demo walkthrough?
Tatsächlich, die E-Mail haben die wirklich so bekommen.
This is the story of a love samurai named Stanley. In this new version, you play the ghost of a dream of a memory of a cyborg warrior trying to find his dead wife inside a poem. The game's central feature, emotion booths. Stepping into any one of these booths will cause the player to actually feel that emotion. And these are just some of the hundreds of thousands of emotions you'll find in the final game. Whereas many video games are content to offer you a finite number of things to do, the Stanley Parable is breaking ground by allowing the player to do literally anything. Let's look at an example. In this scenario, the player has just infused a bicycle with the soul of his great-great-great-uncle Hermophriles. From this point, he might use Hermophriles' ethereal presence to detect nearby mineral deposits, or perhaps he might train the bicycle in the art of undoing temporal paradoxes. It seems that the player has chosen to use the haunted bicycle to deceive townsfolk as a part of his snake oil salesman ruse. How bold. Many players may be too logical to appreciate the Stanley Parable. So in the options menu, you'll be able to adjust for your own personal play style. Try playing in Raphael mode for a real challenge.
Raphael.
Already since the beginning of this video, rave reviews for the game have been pouring in. John Gamerson writes, I've played thousands of hours and had my heart touched 176 times so far. It really hurts. How do you turn that off? While a woman writes, this place has shoes. I love shoes. Oh my god. Shopping, 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 shopping. Quests will be broken up into... It seems we've just encountered one of the game's anti-piracy measures. At random times, it will crash your computer and start deleting files, just in case you downloaded the game illegally. Well, I suppose this is as good a place as any to stop the demo. I hope I've given you something to look forward to, and I certainly hope we can continue to look to Raphael as a messiah for narrative progress. I'm upset that he was so annoyed by my first game, since it has always been my intention to become a person of respect, consideration, and unyielding empathy for others. But until I figure out how to do that, I think we should take some time here at the end of the video just to piss him off a bit. Stanley. 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 Stanley.
Ja, Raphael.
Ja, warte, am Ende kommt, glaube ich, noch der Grund dafür. Weil ich erinnere mich nicht mehr hundertprozentig, woher das kam, aber ja. Ja.
Don't be like Cafe.
Ich bin mir nicht mehr sicher, aber das war mal eine Zeit lang wirklich krass in diese Snakesman-Routine. Das ist ein sehr bekanntes Meme geworden. Und ich kann es verstehen, weil holy fuck war diese E-Mail frech, oder?
Ne. Na.
Aber ja, deswegen dieses Spiel mag ich genau wegen solchen Sachen. Allein mit dem QR-Code, dass du auf die Seite da kommst, dass du das tatsächlich funktioniert und diese ganzen Meta-Gags. Und wie gesagt, einfach... Es tut mir leid, einfach sagen, habt ihr Frauen gefragt? Die sind einfach nicht so logisch und emotional wie wir Männer. Deswegen ist das Spiel so scheiße. Alter, wie am Leben vorbei kann man leben? Es ist... Uff. Naja. Aber ja, Tobi, das war, glaube ich, nahezu alles. Mir fällt nichts mehr ein. Es sei denn noch ein paar einzelne Sachen mit Eimer oder ohne. Und ich würde sagen, die auffälligsten Sachen haben wir gemacht.
Ja, war ein Erlebnis auf jeden Fall, war sehr cool. Spaß gemacht.
Deswegen, meiner Meinung nach, passt dieses Spiel auch so gut in unsere gemeinsame Kategorie, nämlich Metroid Exploration, ne, Explore oder ich weiß nicht, wie sie es genannt haben. Und zwar, dieses Spiel ist eine Erfahrung. Und zwar, du kannst dieses Spiel nie wieder zum ersten Mal spielen. So zum Beispiel Metrovanias und so. Oder Dark Souls oder was auch immer. Viele Spiele spielst du neu, da musst du erstmal Items freischalten und Glocken läuten und Keys öffnen und Tore öffnen und Itemseiten, bis du weiterkommst. Aber dieses Spiel kannst ja von Anfang an alles erreichen, wenn du da hingehst mit den richtigen Sachen. Ne? Also klar, du musst irgendwie erstmal 1, 2 Enden haben, bis das Ultra Deluxe kommt und so. Aber du weißt, was kommt und hast ja nichts mehr davon. Ne? So wie bei Outer Wilds waren ja keine Spielmechaniken, auf die dich gefreut hast. Kein krasser Shooter oder so, sondern... Ja. Die Erfahrung war das. Deswegen würde ich sagen, das ist das, was wir gerade erlebt haben. Wie fandst du's?
Sehr cool, sehr kreativ, muss ich sagen. Hab's ja vorher noch gar nicht gesehen. Deshalb wusste nur, es ist sehr critical acclaimed. Das wusste ich schon vorher und beliebt, aber ich wusste nie so ganz den Grund. Muss ich sagen, oh, habe ich erkannt, warum. Tolles Spiel. Ja.
Mhm.
Und angefangen als Source Mods, wie viele andere Sachen auch. Ja.
Genau. Ne, das ist, würde ich sagen, auch so ein bisschen besonders daran. So wie viele andere Dinge, würde ich sagen. Ne, Source Mod und dann wird's größer und dann hat's halt. Na, also ich würde sagen, auf jeden Fall der Narrator ist der das gecarried hat. Ne? Muss man halt auch einfach mal so sagen.
Ach, der Sprecher, ja.
Der war schon ziemlich gut. Ansonsten, ja, sehr kreativ, sehr viel Meta-Witze, ne? Also von bis du startest das Spiel neu und dann fragt. Ich meine, das fängt ja von Anfang an, indem du das Spiel startest und das Spiel dich fragt, wie viel Uhr es ist. Und du dir einfach denkst, warum fragt mich das Spiel das? Das kannst du doch einfach von der Windows-Uhr auslesen. Das konnten die auch schon damals. Ja. Ne? Also falls Leute denken, das konnten die früher noch nicht, doch, das konnten die schon, also keine Sorge. So alt ist es jetzt auch. Aber ja, ich habe sehr viel positive Erinnerungen an dieses Spiel, genau deswegen. Und jetzt kam ja diese Ultra Deluxe Edition dazu, da kam die Ausstellung eigentlich quasi alles am Bucket-Content.
Ja. Und
halt so ein paar Kleinigkeiten. Und ich muss sagen, sehr gut, hat den Flair sehr gefunden, weil ich fand, ne, man merkt ja auch so, bei Outer Wilds hat man genauso Angst. Kriegen die das überhaupt hin?
Ja.
Den Flair einzufangen und das muss man mal bei Outer Wilds Zukunft gucken, aber die haben auf jeden Fall das hingekriegt. Ja, und jetzt musst du höchstens noch ein paar Achievements machen, indem du vielleicht noch einen Speedrun machst davon, der geht eigentlich relativ simpel, 1, 2 Sachen machst und dann musst du das Spiel 10 Jahre lang nicht spielen, ganz einfach.
Ja, ganz einfach.
Ist halt einfach die Windows-Uhr einmal nach vorne, ne? Also
ja, das haben wir alle so gemacht.
Sehr viele. Ich kenne welche, die haben die 5-Jahres-Achievement von den Originalteil bekommen, aber ja.
Ja, and you.
Ja.
Sehr gut.
Mhm.
Mir wird auch gedankt.
Ja, ich habe das Gefühl, das war auch ein Spiel, das einen als Spieler respektiert und einen ein bisschen auch vorführt, sage ich mal. was andere Entwickler falsch machen, ne, mit diesen
Ja, es hat halt
rausgewaschen.
sehr viel Trope, witzig über Tropes machen und halt witzig über auch andere Entwickler machen. Das ist halt
Ja.
andere Videospiele, ja.
Ja, ansonsten mein Vorschlag wäre als nächstes Spiel, das hier reinfallen würde. Ich bin, glaube ich, davon überzeugt, dass es derselbe Entwickler ist. Lass mich mal kurz gucken.
Superliminal meinst du?
Wie bitte?
Meinst du Superliminal?
Nee.
Nicht? Das
Warte, Superliminal ist, glaube ich, von wen anders. Aber ich gucke nochmal nach. Ob das von denen ist. Okay, ich sehe gerade, die haben mehrere. Aber es ist so ähnlich. Kommt so in dieselbe Gruppe. Das ist auch so ein Spiel, das ist so eine Erfahrung. The Beginner's Guide nennt sich das.
Na, Beginner's Guide.
Es wäre anders, aber es hat irgendwie einen sehr ähnlichen Feeling. Warte. From the Creator of... Okay, es war nicht dasselbe Unternehmen, aber anscheinend so der Ideenhaber oder so.
Ja, okay. Gut, ja.
Wäre mein Vorschlag.
Ja.
Jetzt haut's in die Kommentare, was wir noch spielen sollen.
Richtig, genau. Das war Stanley Parable. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Wir haben sehr, sehr viel gezeigt. Vielleicht nicht 100% alles, aber doch recht vollständig, würde ich mal sagen. Ja, ich hoffe, es hat gefallen. Mir hat Spaß gemacht. Sehr viel gelacht. Sehr humorvolles Spiel auch. Schon mehr gut. Vor allem den Rater öfter mal verrückt gemacht. Sehr gut. Ja, wie gesagt, schaut gerne auch noch die anderen Projekte hier auf dem Kanal. Gibt viel anderen Content hier und ja, viel, was in diese Richtung geht, ist noch nicht so unbedingt, halt so von der Art des Spiels. Aber vieles andere gibt es inzwischen auch schon. Hier, guckt da gerne euch um. Wenn es euch gefallen hat, das ganze Projekt, und ihr habt es noch nicht getan, lasst doch gerne ein Abo da. Komplett kostenlos und würde mich sehr freuen. Ansonsten, wie gesagt, schaut gerne die Playlist, dort alles sortiert. Also findet ihr bestimmt auch noch was anderes, was euch gefällt. Auch anderen Genres gibt es ja alles mögliche. Also guckt da gerne rein. Und ich würde sagen, danke fürs dabei gewesen sein. Bis zum nächsten Projekt. Bis dahin. Ciao, ciao.